Let's get you the big update from the national capital at this point. Particularly if you're going to be traveling, this is something that you are going to be very much wondering. After hours of choco-block roads, congestion in the national capital, multiple barricades and traffic congestion has been lifted at the Delhi-Noida border as farmers who had gathered for a Delhi Chalo march over various demands agreed to vacate the site. Remember, these were not protests that were sudden. These were pre-declared, and the administration cops had ample time to decide on how to regulate these protests. But it was mayhem and anarchy in the national capital region. Roads were blocked, traffic was at snail's pace, a nightmare for commuters at the peak commute in the day. Well, evening peak time commuters, though, have escaped with a close shave. And in fact, if we have latest visuals, if we can play that as well, just to show how the police is now claiming that with the traffic restrictions having been lifted, the commute is easier. And remember, the Supreme Court had once, during the context of protesting farmers, said that protest is a fundamental right, but it cannot come at the cost of inconvenience for public. The protests have ended and are likely to begin next week again. And so, in the national capital mayhem, our question is, why can't the national capital ensure protests without any anarchy? But before we get on to our panelists, let me just very quickly go across to my colleague Kritika Tiwari, who's right now at the Delhi-Noida border. Thank you very much, Kritika. This is peak time travel. We saw huge lines of traffic just stuck up, moving at snail's pace. But what's the situation right now? Is it better? Is it a big relief? Do commuters have anything to worry? Of course, the protests will return next week again. But at this point, what should protesters know? What should commuters know?
Right, as far as the commuters are concerned, we're currently reporting from the Delhi-Noida direct flyway, and on your screens you'll be able to see that the traffic movement of these vehicles in fact has eased up significantly towards the evening. Remember earlier we were reporting from the Greater Noida Expressway, where towards Sector 16 protesters had already breached two barricades set up by the police forces to cross from Mahamaya flyover towards the Prerna Sthal. So that is currently where the protesters are going to be spending their nights and the next 2-3 days. Secretarial talks are going to be taking place, post which the unions will decide whether or not to continue towards the Delhi march. But definitely in the afternoon we had seen all these routes were jammed, all of these routes were choked up. Everywhere that you're seeing free moving traffic right now in the afternoon hours, specifically during the office peak time, had also choked up. So now that all of these routes, multiple routes towards Chilla border, Kalindi Kunj, as well as Yamuna Expressway were also choked, and diversions had been issued for that. But because the police as well as the Greater Noida authorities were able to chart out an understanding with the farmer unions before 5 o'clock, around 4:30 itself, that protest then went inside the Prerna Sthal and the barricades were removed. And on your screens you can see a direct result of that. Traffic is free moving despite it being the office hours, the time at which people generally leave their workplaces and head towards this direct flyway. But we are not seeing any sort of congestions or a chokehold in the traffic as of now, which is definitely a sigh of relief considering how choked all of these routes were during the afternoon. Over to you.
Right. Thank you very much, Kritika, for joining us with those details. In fact, let's just open this up to our panelists. Many would say the protests are over, but there have been protests again and again, particularly these farmers' protests, and these farmers' protests are going to continue. The question that we are asking is, why do people living in the national capital, why do they have to go through these visuals every time there is a massive protests? Why can't there be protests without anarchy in the national capital? I'm being joined at this point by Arvind Kumar Jain, who's a former DGP for Uttar Pradesh, Thakur Karanpal Singh, National Senior Vice President for the Bharatiya Kisan Union, Banu, as well as Pradeep Rawat, who is a citizen voice. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining us. Mr. Pradeep Rawat, let me just come to you, Pradeep Rawat. How was it for you and your colleagues to reach office, to get back home? Getting back home, of course, has been much easier, but what we've been told is people missed their deadlines to reach the office. They were late by several hours. In fact, many in our office were also bad. Just how bad or a nightmare is this on repeat mode, quite honestly?
In fact, today I went from Noida to Delhi. Normally, if I travel from Noida to Delhi, it takes me around 40 to 45 minutes. But today it took me more than 2.5 hours. So you can very well imagine people like me who travel to Delhi, either from Noida or Gurgaon, what they have to suffer. See, whether I am sympathetic to the farmers' cause or not is a separate issue. Ultimately, somebody's right should not cause inconvenience to me or any other citizen. That is the first reason I'm very, very upset about these protests. See, as far as the protests are concerned, as Supreme Court says, they have the right. Absolutely, they have the right. But these protests should be managed in such a way they should not cause inconvenience to any public member. I'll give you an example. Today, suddenly, at yesterday night, the classes were cancelled for the students in Noida who travel from Delhi to Noida or Noida to Delhi. Even there were students who had exams. Even those exams were cancelled. So basically, when things like these happen, they cause inconvenience to everyone. Even if somebody is actually sympathetic to the cause, once they start suffering, they change their mindset. So what I believe is somehow these kind of protests, they should be managed in certain ways or in such a way that they should not cause inconvenience to the general public, and that is happening on a very regular basis. And to tell you the truth, people lose the sympathy of public. This is what I feel.
Okay. All right, let me just get in at this point, Arvind Kumar Jain. Arvind Kumar Jain, we heard Pradeep Rawat. Now, here's a very simple point. Protests were not unruly. Protests were, everybody knew the protests are going to happen today. Everybody knew the farmers' protests were there. People were ready. Information was all over the place. And then you have this absolute tight bandobast. Whether it's right or wrong is what you'll have to tell us. Why can't there be a situation in the national capital of the country where you have protests, where you have the right to protest, but without anarchy on the roads, where people who are not part of the protest can go about doing their life? How impossible is that to ask for?
Commissioner of Police Delhi has served orders for 163, the former 144, on CP Noida, that protesters are not allowed inside Delhi. There is no other option for Noida police but to put up barricades so that those people can be stopped from going to Delhi. Police forces cooperate with each other on such issues, and they must do it. So what can police do when there are people in thousands and thousands and they are using these arteries, these roads only? Roads are limited. I have been posted in these areas, Noida twice. I know what is the condition. In general, this thing at time it takes hours and hours for people to reach from Delhi to Noida or Noida to Delhi. If farmers, they take up these roads and they start protesting in spite of knowing that their protest has been banned in Delhi, they have not got permission. So, and they are simply creating anarchy and nothing else. It is for the citizens to decide. It is
No,
for
but
the
here's the
citizens
question,
to
Mr.
decide.
Arvind Kumar. The Supreme Court has said they have all the right to protest, to ensure
So
that the
that,
protests go on. They have all
yes,
the right to go ahead and be at the places where they need to protest. The Supreme
yes,
Court has not told them you must not protest. The Supreme Court has said that you must protest. So my very simple question is, there are going to be protests in the future as well. The easiest thing to do is barricade roads. Can't there be any other option where there is a right to protest? Everybody, whether you are on their side or not on their side, that's not the point. They have the right to protest. So while they have the right to protest, others have the right to go about in life. You have served in these areas. Can't there be any other ways to deal with
no,
this?
there is no other way. Either you abide by the rules, you abide by the orders of Delhi police. If Delhi police has given you a particular place to hold a meeting, you go and hold it there. But they don't want to hold it there. They want to hold it in different areas. They want to hold it near Parliament. They want to choke Delhi. So that's the point. How can you stop people? very
Thakur
fine.
Kiran
So
Pal
please,
Singh, Thakur Kiran Pal Singh, if I can get you in, you're listening to the top police officials speak. Thakur Kiran Pal Singh ये बोल रहे हैं कि basically आपको permission दिया गया था protest करने के लिए, आपको location कोई और बोला गया था, आपको बोला गया था कि इन एरिया से अंदर नहीं आने का है, और आप फिर भी आ रहे हैं क्योंकि आप सिर्फ एक ऑप्टिक्स क्रिएट करना चाहते हैं, आप बेसिकली वहां पे सब कुछ चोक करना चाहते हैं. आप इस आर्ग्यूमेंट को कैसे लेते हैं? आप व्हाई डू आप ये क्यों नहीं, आप जो कोर्ट बोला है या जहां पे आपको परमिशन मिली आप वहां पे क्यों नहीं गए डायरेक्टली?
मैडम, पहले तो धन्यवाद आप मिरर नाउ को और आपको कि आप कम से कम किसानों की बातें रख रही हैं. मैं आपको बताता हूं कि ये जो है किसान दुखी होकर के, और किसान अपनी बातें रख रहे थे काफी दिनों से यहाँ ग्रेटर नोएडा अथॉरिटी पर. ये यहाँ पे जो अधिकारी हैं अथॉरिटी के, ये इतने 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 बिगड़े, मतलब किसानों को कोई तरह का किसी भी तरह का महत्व नहीं देते, जिस वजह से ये महीनों से चला आंदोलन. इन्हें कूच किया गया था, इन्हें बताया गया था कि भाई हम जो है, आप हमारी छोटी छोटी मांगे हैं उनको मान लीजिए, और कोई किसी की पर्सनल मांगे नहीं थी, किसान हित की मांग थी. जो नोएडा आज इंडस्ट्री बसी है या दुनिया में अपना नाम परचम लहरा रहा है, किसानों की जमीन पर बसा हुआ है, और किसानों ने चाहा कि भाई हमें अपना जो उचित मुआवजा है वो मिलना चाहिए, उचित जो हमारे वो अधिकार है उन्हें दीजिए. और ये लंबे समय से धरना चल रहा था अथॉरिटी पर, और उसमें जब ना सुनी अधिकारियों ने और यहाँ के प्रशासन अधिकारियों ने, तो ये आज की ये घोषणा थी कि हम 2 दिसंबर को हम दिल्ली कूच करेंगे. तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. किसान
ठाकुर
पहले भी
करण जी,
मानता था.
आपके जूम में कोई प्रॉब्लम है, हम आपके पास वापस आते हैं, लेकिन एक सिंपल प्रश्न हमारे पैनलिस्ट भी बोल रहे हैं, आप अगर ऐसे प्रोटेस्ट करेंगे जहां पे आपको परमिशन नहीं है, आप वहां पे भी प्रोटेस्ट करेंगे, तो लोग जो आपको सपोर्ट करने वाले हैं वो भी आपके अगेंस्ट हो जाएंगे कि उनको परेशानियां हो रही हैं. तो अगर आप परमिशन के दायरे से बाहर जाएंगे तो आपको जो सपोर्ट करने वाले हैं शायद उनकी तरफ से भी आपको ऑपोजिशन ही मिलेगा.
देखिए, परमिशन तो कोई भी किसानों को देता नहीं है. एक जिलाधिकारी का है, एक एसडीएम परमिशन नहीं देता है. किसानों का तो दुर्भाग्य है, किसानों को कोई भी परमिशन नहीं देता. और किसान अगर परमिशन लेके, अगर ये आज रोड पर ठंड में और ये सब जो इतना अपना घर का काम धाम छोड़ के आ रहे हैं, मैडम परमिशन कोई नहीं देता. परमिशन तो किसान को इसमें अपने घर बैठने की परमिशन है. क्या आप घर बैठ रही है, मुंह बंद रखिए. और ये किसानों को वही पहले वाला किसान समझ रहे हैं.
Okay.
आज की डेट में किसानों के बच्चे इंजीनियर, किसानों के बेटे फोर्स में, किसानों के बच्चे सब कुछ है, और सब समझता है किसान, गांव का किसान, हर जगह किसान ये समझता है कि भाई हमें अधिकार कैसे लिए जा सकते हैं.
Okay, let me just get in Arvind Kumar Jain. Arvind Kumar Jain, let me just ask you this very simple question. Now these protests are going to continue. The farmers are upset, the farmers are angry, the farmers are saying, listen, we never get permissions to do what we want to do. There is political motivation, there's political agenda, so on and so forth. Farmers may be right, farmers may be wrong. It depends upon which side of the prism you really are watching this from. But from a law and order situation, Arvind Kumar Jain, the protests continued in the past. The protests are going to continue next week. There's going to be Delhi Chalo and there are going to be other protests as well. As of now, as the plan stands, if this is the case that the protests are going to happen in the afternoon, and since the morning 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, there's going to be heavy bandobast, traffic restrictions in key roads in the national capital region, it's going to be mayhem again.
So there is no other alternative. That's what I'm saying, that people have to decide. Even these farmers have children who are studying in Noida or in Delhi. Even their exams must have been cancelled. Even their families must have been put to inconvenience. So they have to realize their relatives will be put to inconvenience because the roads are limited. You know it very well, how many roads are there between Delhi and Noida. And if there are thousands and thousands of protesters on these roads, naturally there will be traffic jams and they have to be stopped. Because Delhi police
But those thousands of protesters have not even come onto the roads, Arvind Kumar Jain. That's the question everybody is asking. The protests were for afternoon. These protesters had not even come in through the roads. And the traffic regulations, the strict traffic regulations, including the barricades and the traffic restrictions had kicked in from early in the morning. Hours before the protesters even took to the roads.
They have to be enforced because you can't put up 1 or 2 barricades and stop the road, stop so many farmers. You have to do proper barricading. You have seen it on Haryana border. You have seen it on Punjab border. What kind of arrangements have been made? Those arrangements have not been made on these roads. But in future, if it continues, such arrangements will be made, and everybody will suffer. Office goers will suffer. Factory goers will suffer. Children will suffer. So naturally, one has to decide, because the demands of farmers, they can't be met. They can't be met by the government. Whatever I have read, because they want MSP for so many
That's beyond the scope of our debate. I think that's about negotiations. That's about democracy. That's about how they will exercise their weight. I think in democracy, nothing is off limits. We have seen that with issues after issues. It's not just about the farmers' issues. Many things that people would say was absolutely impractical and non-policy has been offered to them on the plate. That's really a very different role of democracy and protest, and that's why these protests often people would say is very important to exercise their voice. But Pradeep Rawat, if I can get you in at this point, here's what often happens. You have the right to protest, and then you have the right to life. It's unfortunate that the right to life is being seen as something opposed to right to protest, as is being played out in the National Capital Region. Do you see that given how people are voicing their concerns?
Actually, as a citizen, I feel most important right is right to life. I mean, there's no denying that this is the most important aspect as a right. But what I feel is everybody has a right to protest. That I agree. And if the Supreme Court even says that they're allowed to do it, they must do it. There's nothing wrong in protest. But what I feel is there should be a method to the madness also. What I believe is, whether from the side of the authorities or the government, or whether from the side of the people who are protesting, what they should do is somehow find a middle ground where the protest can be held. They can talk across the table or whatever way that suits them. But at least the general public should not be inconvenienced. Imagine somebody going to office, getting late, that is fine. Okay, for a day he don't mind, he or she doesn't mind. But imagine if ambulance is going and that gets stuck, a life could be lost. So what I believe is, ultimately, inconvenience to public and right to life, they are the things they should be most important. And anybody who's protesting, whether it's farmers or anybody else, they should keep in mind nobody should be inconvenienced. And actually what happens is, most of the people who are daily travelers or who go to the offices from across Delhi NCR, they somehow are sympathetic to farmers' cause also. Because see, my family, I am from a family of farmers. I have absolutely no grudges against the farmers. But once I start getting delayed to my office every day, I get upset about a lot of things, because I get stuck, or my son is not able to go to the school. Then obviously I'll feel aggrieved about it. So basically, what we should do as a citizen, we appeal to everybody. Try to do whatever protest you want, but before doing anything, don't break the law, number one. Number two, government should make sure that protest should be held in big grounds where normal public, general public is not inconvenienced, and people get what they want, but without causing inconvenience to everybody else. This is what I feel.
Okay, we're totally out of time. Arvind Kumar Jain, Thakur Kiranpal Singh, as well as Pradeep Rawat, thank you very much for joining us. And as we have been driving, this isn't about what's right and what's wrong when it comes to the demands that the farmers are raising. This is about how, unfortunately, right to protest is now being seen as opposed to right to life, when the two are very much part of each other. And the question that we are asking, and India needs to really look at very closely, is why can't protests be held without anarchy? It can't be only the onus on the protesters, but also on the law enforcers. Thank you very much for joining us.